Thank you.
Thank you.
Nobody have any public comments, so we will move into discussion of report items. The first item will be the monthly financial report.
Good evening again. I put together just a real quick highlight PowerPoint of the monthly financial report. I believe that you've all received the full report for review, so I'll be available, obviously, to ask any questions or answer any questions. I guess I can ask questions. That would be odd. So this financial report is through August. It's 2-month representation of financial activity in the district and the general fund. This is an overview of our revenues. I don't know if you recall last month, but the plan amounts that I established for the year were based on a 3-year historical trend. We're short on our revenues through August, the first 2 months of the year. That's primarily due to our local property tax, which, like I said, was based on a trend, the 3-year trend previously, but it's not uncommon to not receive a whole lot in property tax revenue in July and August. So I expect that that revenue will be caught up in the coming months. This is overall variance for our expenses. We are under budget at $355,000. It's a fairly significant number, but the majority of that is really timing. That there was an expense planned to occur in August, but we didn't actually pay for it until September, and that will be reflected next month. This is the same budget to actual comparison, but this is by function. An example of a large dollar item that was budgeted in August but not paid until September is our liability insurance. That's just because of when we received the invoice from the vendor. Any questions on the financial report?
So no questions, but I do have something to. So when you look at it, you have some of these that are based on timing, right? It didn't hit when we thought it was going to hit. It's going to hit some month later. So I guess some way to identify or see how's that going to impact the overall at the end. I mean, I think we look at it right now. It says, well, it was budgeted in September. It hadn't hit. It's going to hit in October. So we see a big favorable side on the expenses right now. But we know that expense is still coming. So just a way to make sure that those are included and they will hit actuals in the month that they hit. But I guess from a budget standpoint, this is something that we.
So I don't know if you recall, but in the proposed template that I provided you guys back in July, I believe it was, on this particular screen, I had included a column here for a re-estimate that would capture that. So it would adjust for any savings that we truly realize that we know is savings, but also include any expenses we know we're still coming in that projection. What I'm hoping to do is have that for you quarterly, so have a quarterly re-estimate to the financials. And hopefully that will answer.
I figured you were thinking about it, so thank you.
You're welcome.
So I guess looking at the two things that kind of stick out to me, so the staff development, we were over. So will that ease up? I mean, why were we so much over on what we proposed in July and August, and we spent quite a bit more?
We won't, I don't expect us to be over at the end of the year.
Okay.
We would just have to manage that as the year goes on to ensure that we're adjusting for that. future months.
And then property appraisal is the other thing, I guess you're going to address that.
The property appraisal is going to be over at the end of the year if we don't adjust the budget. We have a contract for services in that line item. That's the only thing in that line item. And the budget in that function hadn't been adjusted with the increased contract expenditure that we anticipate. So I did look at that, and it is on my radar to bring to you next month with an amendment.
Is that a percentage or a flat fee of our total revenue brought in from the county?
You know, I don't recall how the terms were negotiated, but I can have that ready for you next month.
Do you have any questions for us?
No, sir. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
And I think I'm next. Just stay here.
Yes. The next item will have the demographic study, Ms. Cowley and Mr. Alexander.
Yes, I'd like to welcome Mr. Brent Alexander. He's with School District Strategies, the firm that conducted our demographic study for us.
Thank you, Ms. Kelly. Good evening, Ms. Purple, Dr. Wood, board members. Again, my name is Brent Alexander. I'm the Director for School District Strategies. It's a pleasure to present the demographic study that we completed back in the spring. So a lot of the stuff you're going to see in the report is for the 18-19 school year, but I will do my best to update data that we have for the early fall here as we go through the slides. I've got quite a bit to go through, so let's get started. The report begins with the numbers that we get from our national data source. These are for the overall population and total households in the district, as well as there's some additional demographic figures there as well. But the key thing here is if you saw the original report from back in the spring, this has been updated to show you the numbers that we got this summer for 2019. So the overall population in the district is now estimated to be 17,500 residents. Total households are now right about 6,000. If you look back since the 2010 census, those are about a 24% increase over the last 9 years. You average that out over a 9-year time frame, you're generally looking at a growth rate of about 2.7% per year. Under 18 numbers from Esri show that the school age population growing about 1.3% per year over the last 9 years. Now, when you look at the total enrollment for the 18-19 school year, just over 3,400 students made Livonia ISD the 21st largest in total enrollment in the greater San Antonio area. You can see here the annual snapshot numbers for the district. The October 2018 snapshot total of 3,402 was a district record. And you can see from the 13 to 18 time frame, the district grew by almost 300 students. And from 2008 to 2018, you can see that gradual climb in enrollment of almost 500 students. Now, the enrollment number that we got for last Friday showed 3,364 students, so I'll comment more on that here in a minute. But these are your annual year-over-year numbers. The key point is that the district has seen increasing growth from prior to 2008, or essentially 14 straight years, averaging 2.3% annual growth. Go close to what we saw from Esri's overall population estimates at 2.7%. But note that the last 3 to 5 years that the rate of growth has been slowing, averaging 1.7%. And now that number that we have for this fall is actually a decline of 32 students. So that would be the first time that the district has experienced a decline in enrollment in quite some time. Let's look, before we look at more detail on the grade level numbers, what you see here are the 5-year net growth totals for enrollment for all the districts in the greater San Antonio area. The 282 net growth that the district experienced ranked 12th among the 30 districts in the greater San Antonio. The growth occurred across all the attendance levels. You can see most of it did occur at the primary level. You see those pre-K through second grade numbers of 26% from 2010. Up and down a little bit at the intermediate level, flat at junior high, and then strong growth at the high school level, up 27% from 2008. The grade level totals are shown here on this slide. Note that in 2018-19, sixth grade and 10th grade had record class sizes. We've also seen strong numbers at the kindergarten level the last 2 years. Now, addressing the number of students here this fall, what we're seeing initially right out of the gate is the pre-K numbers are off by 30 compared to what they've been. So there's, our expectation is for the district to be in that 3,400 to 3,450 range, but right out of the gate, the pre-K numbers are off by 30. So that explains some of that drop. The code survival rates are in here for your reference. I'm going to move on. This is, one of the things that we look at in every study is kindergarten and how to project out for what's happening with the local birth rate. So what you see here, reflected in the blue line, those are the births for mothers living in the 78121 zip code at the time of their baby's birth. We've moved those numbers 5 years forward and compared them to the kindergarten numbers. So you can see that from 2014 to 16, the last three numbers on the right-hand side, you can see a gradual increase that we've seen in the number of births. So that means that kindergarten should be poised to see a gradual increase. Now, with that said, the numbers are coming in flat. 253 there is the projection for 2019. It's currently at 240 students. So kindergarten has remained flat, but it's still strong and at the same level that it's been these last 3 years. Now, an interesting report that we get from the state that we monitor now for every district is the student transfer report. This report tracks students that live in the district but are attending another public school district or public charter school. So what you see are represented by the orange bars are the total number of students that live in the district that are not attending school here in La Verne ISD. Note that number has steadily climbed since the 15-16 school year. It's up 44 students and was 124 for the 18-19 school year. So you're probably asking, where are they going? What's going on here? Well, the first thing is that in 2015 to 16, that's the year that we began to see public charter school expansion across the state, and really here in the greater San Antonio area. But if you can see what the numbers are like for the district, really the expansion of charter schools has not had a major impact here in La Verne. What's happening is we're seeing more students that live in the district enroll and attend school in another public school district. So you can see just from 15-16 to 18-19, that number has increased from 63 to 110. And a lot of those are down in the other category where you see the combined total for all districts that have 4 or less students attending. So essentially what you're seeing here is a lot of teachers and district employees of other districts that have moved into the district but are not, their students are not enrolled here locally. There are other demographic characteristics listed here for your information. This next couple slides show the 18-19 race and ethnic distribution of the student population. The comment here, you've seen a gradual increase in the proportion of Hispanic students over these last few years. how that compares to neighboring districts and the state and Region 20 are shown here. Economically disadvantaged in the 18-19 school year, about 27% of learning students were on free and reduced lunch. That is comparable to what we see in SCUC, but well below most of the neighboring districts, as well as Region 20 in the state that you see that are up closer to 60% today. Now, one other exercise we do in every study is geocode the student locations. What you see here are the dots. Those are enrolled students in the district, so you can get a sense of how the students are distributed across the district geographically. In order to give you a better sense of what all those numbers look like, I created these planning zones. Note that I simply use natural boundaries, major highways, student clusters, neighborhoods, to come up with these broad areas. But what it does show is that the majority of the students today live in the area that is west and southwest, or excuse me, south and southwest of Highway 87, there in the southwestern portion of the district. Now, part of the reason the district has grown for the last 10 plus years has been instead of growing housing market here locally. This shows the existing home sales for homes listed in MLS in the district. You can see how those numbers have climbed since 2008, ending back in the spring. The rate was just about 230 a year. This summer, that number has climbed to another record high of 251. The median sold price, you can see over the last 10 years how it's grown over $100,000 in this last 12-month period, ending in September. 359 was a record median sold price. Now, what's interesting, since, for example, neighboring districts like in SCUC, you would have a lot of major new home subdivisions with the major production builders. Here, the drivers of the housing growth are the custom builders. And so what we see are the custom builders add their spec homes into MLS. So this next slide highlights the growth that we're beginning to see from the custom builders. What I did was look for homes that have been built in the last, that we either built in 2018 or 2019. So you can see the gradual increase in the number here. If you look at the last 21 months, that number is now 81 for the custom builders. Now, in addition to the neighborhoods that are seeing custom homes being built, there are several that we've been working with the county and the city that we're tracking as far as in progress and planned for the future. One of the more recent neighborhoods that you probably are aware of is the Cibolo Ridge subdivision that has 89 lots. Back in May, that subdivision had 26 of those 89 underway. But we also are watching additional phases coming in Eden Crossing in the southwest portion of the district. They're looking at almost 71 additional lots down there in that portion of the district. One of the main, in addition, before I talk about one of the major projects, is the Westfield Ranch landing area. That one has the third phase that was underway back in the spring that they're now building in. But one of the key things that has come up here recently has been what I have listed in your report is the Friar Tract, which is the 200 lot subdivision that's planned for just right here at 1346 and 775. It's my understanding that that has been renamed as Woodbridge Farms. So we're still looking at a 3-phase development of 200 lots, homes starting from the mid-200s and up. But that project is still going through rezoning in the city of Livonia here over the last couple months. So what does this potentially mean, these new subdivisions for future growth? I've got these next several slides are a series of maps to show you where the different subdivisions that we used in our sample, as well as highlighting, for example, here the 200 lot development there for the prior track. So I'm going to move forward through these and talk about the student yield. So what we found through the geocoding in working with the appraisal district data for occupied homes in each one of these particular neighborhoods or combined areas of several neighborhoods are summarized here in the table. So you can see that we looked at over 3,500 homes and what that yield is for single family shows that the district typically sees about 0.62 students enrolled per home. When you look at this, the sample size for apartments and mobile home communities is not that big, so that yield for apartments is 0.45 and mobile homes is 0.66. Now, I'll say that the single-family yield is very typical for what we see across the state. A lot of the districts have seen their numbers slide back towards 0.65, so you all see a lot of neighborhoods, like an Eden Crossing, where that number is 0.78. You see some that are just below it, but the average is, again, very typical there, where you're seeing about 62 students every 100 homes that are built. Mobile home number is a little bit lower than what we see in other counties and across the region. That number can be more like a 0.8 to 1.0 per space. So what this means is when you look at all of the lots that are in inventory and the addition of the new apartment complex here and the student yields, and we also looked at what the state demographer was projecting for the under 18 population for Wilson County. That number comes back to about 1.4%. So we had a 1.3 from Esri, 1.4 from the state demographer, and even with your historical grade level pattern and projected growth, we're looking at a path that is, the blue line is a 1.8% annual growth. Now recall that the 10-year pattern was 2.3, that's the red, but you can, as I mentioned, the district's already starting the 19-20 school year a little bit lower than the 34-24 that we had as our low point to start the year. But generally, I think these next 2 to 3 years, you would be on the low to moderate path, but if the developers and the builders do deliver a particular subdivision like what's planned out here, you should see the rate of growth accelerate once that subdivision is up and running going forward. Now, the projections for each campus under each scenario is here. I know that's a lot to cover quickly, but I'll take any questions that you have at this time.
Is there a way, it's a shot in the dark to say, okay, we're gonna build these neighborhoods and, because we're gonna have so many kids come in, like the average of 62 per 100. But based on the sales price of the house, the average sales price, is there any information out there that says, okay, this is gonna be the typical buyer, and this is how, they're gonna, it's maybe not gonna be the first time home buyer, maybe second home buyers, or maybe their kids will be a little bit older, or is there any statistical information out there?
Well, what you're basically saying is that in order to afford a house in that price range, you think the household would be more mature?
Well, that's what I'm wondering, if there's any information that we could...
Historically, I believe that is correct, but I would say that the interest rate has changed all that.
Right.
With the interest rate falling as low as 3.49 this summer, we've seen a lot younger people have more buying power than they've had in previous decades and generations. So that number has been a little bit distorted in a lot of places. I mean, I have districts that I work with where we're seeing homes that are in the 500,000 range, and there's still elementary kids as the primary generator that the new home is produced. But 250 and up in the greater San Antonio market is more of your middle and moving towards your upper move-in.
Right.
So I would typically expect to see more of your middle school kids and older. And I think that's what you've seen in the high school numbers. You've seen a lot of people come in those middle grades, and that's why you've seen the high school numbers as big as they've been these last several years. But it depends. I mean, what we don't know at this time is who the builder is, and essentially what they're going to do. That'll play a big role. You know, if it's one of the major builders that ends up in there, then it could produce younger students. But at this point, I don't know the answer, but I would suspect that they would be more in the middle grades. A lot of times we're seeing the numbers in really about fourth grade is where a lot of the middle prices, yes.
Yeah.
When you look at, in one of your slides talked about the transfer outs. So you'd mentioned that there was, kind of this trend, I guess it happened around 15 or so in regards to private, was it?
Charter school.
Charter school. And then we see a steady increase from 15, 16 through 18, 19. I mean, is this a trend that you've seen through some of your other research? I guess I'm just trying to gauge, is this a normal trend or is it above average, below average? Kind of, what does this mean?
Well, the trend typically that you would see when you see a chart like this is that the charter schools are the reason that number is increasing. You are a little bit different than the fact that the charter schools aren't really having an impact. You're too far away from them.
Right.
But what you have is a lot of people that are working in the more urban areas, but they love to be here in Birmingham for their family. So that they're continuing to take their child with them to the other, whatever it is.
So they want to live out here, but and a lot of times it's easier for a teacher working at a campus with your own child, I guess, at that campus.
Probably as simple as that.
But most of the stuff y'all see as far as trends like this is in regards to charter schools. Okay, but it's not necessarily for Laverne.
Correct.
Okay.
For example, it just takes one to open up, and then you can see the impact. We've seen that in most of the San Antonio districts. Ones that are more of your than urban districts along the 410 corridor had a much more dramatic impact. But we've even seen in SCUC with school that opened on 15 days, and that's had a big impact.
Okay, very good, thank you.
And maybe one of these slides, is there a way to see, is it a particular age of student that's transferring out? Is it a proportion of high schoolers going out, or is it just the younger ones, or is there not any way to tell that?
Unfortunately, the state, this is a specific that is a data guess. That question is being asked more often now that a lot of districts are seeing their numbers change. So maybe through your PEMS coordinator and your discussion with the TEA, we might see this report get more detailed. But at the moment, this is pretty much all we get. It's the total and where they're at, not what grade they're in.
See, I could see that if it were a large percent of younger students, then maybe it's easier as a teacher working somewhere else to have your younger child with them, as you said. If it's more high school students, then is it because they're going somewhere where there's different programs or better options? And if that would be something to reflect on as a district and say, do we need to beef up our options then to these particular students to make sure we retain them?
And do you look at the aspect of the military student or the military family, or even federal civil service type families that are rotating in and out of the district? Is that a component? Probably a small factor, but
I don't have a lot of specific data on that. So we have to make a basic assumption that a lot of those are going to stay relatively level to the current level. unless, there's a major
There's
announcement about
some
something changing the
Families
bases.
depart, some come in
Yes,
as
yes.
replacement.
Yes, and that turnover is constantly going, but there's not really anyone tracking that I know of. Any major base announcements or changes, we do factor that in, but most have been stable here these last few years.
Can you go to slide 9? I think you kind of skipped over. I was just curious on what this is actually telling me.
This is the number, well, it's the ratio of the students from the previous year and the previous grade that have moved on to the next grade. So if you see a 1.0, that's a 100% survival of the kids in second grade moving up to third grade. So this does reflect that movement, but note that growth is in here as well. It can impact the ratios, but what we're typically looking at here, I mean, you can see that you all have grown in first grade on those different averages all the way up into the high school grades. But I will tell you that your numbers for high school, we've had a considerable amount of growth in there, so that's boosted those numbers up into the upper 90%. But in a lot of districts in San Antonio, that number can be as low as 78% in 10th grade, mid-80s. So you all are retaining your kids that are here. I mean, that's really what that's saying. Whereas a lot of districts, they might grow, they might be rapidly growing in K through 8, but they lose so many in 10th grade, 11th grade, that it ends up showing a flat pattern. So the way to read that is that if you're trying to forecast each one of these historically, you've been seeing about a 5% increase in kindergarten and first grade every year. But you do have to factor in that you lose 15% of your ninth graders from 10th grade, and then you would lose 22% or so of your, 3.2% of your 2.2% of your 11th graders from 10th grade. That's how this works. And when you see that low scenario, it's really, we use these numbers higher, they're weighted more heavily in that methodology. That's your color survival.
I want to ask you, I noticed you were targeting the 78121 zip code, but we also have 78101. I know on the map, it looks like you captured everything, but there is more than just the one zip code.
Yeah, so I used what made up as much of the geography as I could. It's difficult for me to proportion out the numbers for that area.
Now, it looks like, according to the maps, you're spot on, so, yeah. Thank you.
I have a question regarding, and we're going to use the prior track that you used in your report, $250,000 homes, but I'm hearing they're going to be 1,500 square foot homes. Have you done any kind of study to indicate that, Mike?
If that is the case, like I said, the city could not provide exact details about what this is going to be. So, a lot of times when we're seeing, market-wide, we're seeing the square footage offerings get smaller. We're seeing the prices move towards more value, towards the middle. Here in San Antonio, that is really translates into 170 to about 260. That's your entry level when you first move up today here. It's a little higher in Austin and Dallas Fort Worth, but here locally, when you start to see those plans get lower and lower, what builders are trying to do is get down in price on that. And if you go north up into the St. Hedwig area on 1518, you'll see a lot of what the new generation of lots look like, and how the builders are staying in that mid-200s and down, is building smaller houses. But it's a trend statewide, and it's due to affordability, trying to get the land is more expensive and more cost, and the builders are en masse trying to move down in price. What brought us out of the recession was the high end of the market, and here as we're 8-9 years into the current housing cycle, and in order to target more of the millennials smaller square footages and town cars.
Any other questions? Really appreciate your information and doing all this work, it's very eye-opening.
Well, thank you very much, and it was a pleasure to do the reporting all for the first time. Thank you very much.
Great, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Now we'll move on to the discussion and action items, the consent agenda, items to be approved in one all-encompassing motion and discussion is desired, a particular item that will be removed from the consent agenda. The minutes from the September 16th, 2019 regular meeting, the minutes from the September 30th special workshop meeting, and the financial statements.
I move to approve the consent agenda as presented.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor? Motion passes 6-0. Next item is consider and take possible action to approve the T-test timeline. Mr. Flores?
Good evening, Ms. Burkle, Dr. Wood, members of the board. This item I have up here, we'll go to the sheet. It's just a calendar. So this calendar item is, it's a T-test, it's the appraisal calendar for the school year. This is to be adopted in September. September, we were learning our lanes, and I found out this isn't my lane, so I presented this calendar to y'all. And what I do want you to know is our principals have been following this calendar. This timeline has not been forgotten. It just hasn't been presented to you all. It follows commissioner's rules on appraisal system, T-test appraisal system. That's what we're using. And in addition, I will show you that locally we also developed a suggested calendar for student growth measure. And it's just to help our principals, APs, everyone just stay on task and meet the goals, because the year does go by pretty quick. Any questions?
I move to approve the Texas Teacher Evaluation and Support System T-test calendar as presented.
I second that motion.
Any discussion? All in favor? Motion passes 6-0. Thank you very much. Next item is consider and take possible action on the 2019-2020 revised compensation plan. Mr. Flores?
All right, so September was the last time we visited this, and I promised you I'd be back up here to just fill in the spots we were missing, such as GT. We're still waiting on GT money. We've received our GT money, and we have a little strategy on how to use the GT money for this year. So one thing we did, I do want to get to this pay plan first, because we did leave out a grounds supervisor. That position has existed, we just did not list it on our approved revised plan in September. So the cost is, yearly, it's a cost increase of $300 to get him on the right scale that we developed here. So currently we had him with the other groundskeepers, but he does purchasing, he does a lot of supervisory responsibilities, and this is where he belongs comparing with everyone else. So I do want to make a note of the grounds supervisor there. All right, and stipends. Got it. Thank you. Stipends. So here's our GT money, and we have gifted and talented coordinators. And we were asking for one per campus, and we're asking for a $1,500 stipend for each one. Along with that, HV3 GT stipend, of course, there's some strings attached, and that is the reason why we're asking for $1,500. They are going to pioneer our new GT program in the sense that it's always existed, but with some new requirements such as there were, what I understand are coming pretty quickly, are GT students will have IEPs, individualized education plans, and they're going to be treated like a special population, as they should be, but they're going to make us a little more accountable for that. So this is going to require our coordinators to gather information, have meetings, and just really put these IEPs in place and just coordinate with other teachers. And that's the reason why we're comparing it to what a campus special ed coordinator would do. And one for each campus, $1,500, with a total of $6,000. the money we receive will cover this.
So that's part of their extra responsibility now is to prepare the IEP for the individual students?
Yes, sir, we're gonna look at, all the requirements that they're going to ask us to do. Jackie's here. We know what we know, and I think there's more coming.
It's coming.
Mhm.
It's not here yet, but they're telling us it's coming, so we're just trying to be proactive. So there's some new things, so.
But you're thinking that the creation of the IEP will fall on those coordinators, not on necessarily the classroom teacher, will it be a joint?
No, it probably will fall on the coordinators, because we've got a lot of GT kids in the district, so it's gonna be, so like I said, it's not here yet, but they are telling us, they being TEA and Region 20, everybody else, it's coming, so we wanna get this in place, so we're ready for it, so.
And this is part of the HB3?
This is one of the last weeks of November that they, said they'd be ready by November, so.
Okay.
And the funding we receive for GT covers this.
Covers this.
Oh, yeah.
I move to approve the revisions to the 2019-2020 compensation plan.
I second that.
Any discussion? All in favor? Motion passes 6-0. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Next item is consider and take possible action to approve the intermediate PTO donation to purchase a swing set and kickball backstop. Mr. Deck.
Good evening, Ms. Burkle and Dr. Wood and members of the board. I would like to consider and possible take action for a wonderful project that we're proposing for the intermediate campus. And I'd like to welcome here Ms. Amber Cervenka, the PTO president. And she has a few notes she's going to bring out about the project.
Good evening. And this year we had our Apex Fun Run back in September. Our fun was on the 20th of September, and we were very successful as we have been in the past. We actually raised and profited $32,397 for our campus. In the process, when we get started with school, we do send out, our admin is amazing, and send out a poll for our campus with our teachers to find out what we kind of are interested in to buy and purchase this year. And swings has actually been quite on the top of our list for a few years. We've just had some other things that we've been trying to put into place. So this year we were really excited that we raised enough money, and Mr. Deck has been phenomenal in getting us turnkey bids and really moving this project forward really quickly. We also talked about a kickball field last year. The kids love to play kickball. We use it sometimes as rewards and stuff throughout the year, and we wanted to give them an area other than underneath the basketball court and kind of open that area up. So I'm going to let Mr. Deck talk, he knows more about it.
So these projects are again turnkey. They're material and labor all included, no cost to the district. Right now, our intermediate campus only has two individual swings for the students to use. So the campus mentioned that there is usually a long line for kids waiting to get in the swings. So it was something that they brought up as they would love to have additional swings. So we're proposing to add 10 additional swings. Also adding a backstop area for a kickball area. So this is the swing set, how it would look. This is a standard, industry standard type swing set, very, very low maintenance, all galvanized steel, so there's no painting involved. Also, which is included is a fall zone protection, which that'll keep us in compliance. This is the layout on the blueprints of it, 10 swings. Also, there is also a handicap accessible area that will be added into that as well. That will be included into the fall protection. That way, if we wanted to put an additional ADA swing, we could add that to it. Here's a zoom of the swing set. This is the kickball area. So it's basically this back corner coming around on our internal road. This is mainly to kind of protect balls from flying over into our parent pickup area. This would be the kickball area. They'd kind of be going off that way. and this is our proposed swing set location as well. And utilizing this back corner here, this still allows us for additional growth. If we were to ever need future growth to this campus, adding on additional classroom space, we would still be able to have this space here.
So that's one of my questions. You did coordinate with PBK at least on what their vision would be?
Yeah.
Okay.
So any questions?
No, I think it's great that we get the swings, I know that's usually a high item for kids. And there is a lot of research too, that the motion swinging actually stimulates the brain quite a bit. And so that helps those kids to, be out there and doing that, and probably be more successful in the classroom also.
Appreciate you, Amber, and your group that does this. I mean, it just seems like every year that y'all come, PTO comes with just large impacts to those kids. So I do appreciate y'all's effort and hard work in doing that for the kids. So thank y'all very much.
Yes, thank you very much. Jeremy, from a maintenance standpoint, how long is the engineered wood fiber on the landing surface? How long does that typically last?
Usually about 2 years, right about 2 years, and you'd have to just keep topping it off and topping it off. So usually you get about 2 years out of it.
That's definitely something too we can keep in mind later, knowing that in 2 years, we need to maybe purchase some more stuff to go with that.
We really appreciate all of the hard work on this. Yeah, I know that this swings are a big deal, so that's a great thing. Thank you very much.
Do you have a timeline on estimated completion?
I don't have as soon as we get a green, if we were to get a green light, then it's going to be pretty quick. We're going to push fast.
I move to accept the donation of the PTO for the intermediate campus swing and backstop. Second that motion.
Any discussion? All in favor? Motion passes. You have your green light. Thank you Next item is considering possible action to approve the purchase of a multi-function school activity bus. Mr. Shield and Ms. Simmons.
Okay. Good evening again. So we are here to talk about possibility of purchasing an activity bus. That would be a 90-10 split between CTE funding and transportation. And just to kind of give you sort of a really quick overview of CTE, or career technical education, 90% of our students at LVHS take at least one CTE course at some point during their 4 years, because it does make up a huge chunk of our electives. Districts receive 35% more funding for CTE students than for non-CTE students, so we receive what we call weighted funding. Per House Bill 3, 55% of state CTE funding must be spent on CTE programming. And then the current allotment estimate for this year is $2.2 million, which is up from last year a little bit. And then at LVHS we have over 59, or we have 59 currently CTE courses. There we go. Okay, and just to give you sort of an idea of the courses that are offered and how many of each there are. So we have our, in our different clusters, so we have our Ag, Food, and Natural Resources, which we have 14 clusters. And over on the right is what we call our CTSOs, our Career and Technical Student Organizations. And those are organizations where they go to different contests and things, and one you're probably most familiar with is FFA and Ag, but there's HOSA, the kids that were here earlier are part of HOSA. And that is, it's more co-curricular than extracurricular. It's part of the programs that they go and compete. So that's to give you an idea of what these are. Our Arts, AV, Technology, Communication, we have 8 courses, and we have Skills USA and BPA. Our Business and Marketing has Finance, we have 8 courses. manufacturing, which that is our engineering courses, falls under what's called manufacturing now, with House Bill 3, some new programs of study. So we have 3, our education and training, we have 4, our health sciences, which were the students that were up here earlier, we have 6 courses. Hospitality and tourism, that's where our culinary falls. We have 4, our law and public service, we have 5, and then our STEM, science, technology, engineering, and mathematics, and engineering kind of double books in there, but we have 7 of those courses. And then on the right, you'll see the different CTSOs that they compete in. Okay, so this is an estimate, projected and estimate of total travel days for CTE programs. This does not include if they advance to regional or state or anything beyond that. So that could change, throughout the year. But so travel days where transportation is required from the district. Our ag sciences travel almost the most now with our practicum, but they have 83 days, but 13 of those are outside of our calendar school year because they're in the summer FFA convention and ag science stuff, teachers convention. And then our health sciences, and most of that is the travel now that our students are doing for practicum and going to Floresville every day. Our business, our BPA, if you remember last year they went to nationals. So they had not only their travels within state, but then they ended up having to fly into Anaheim for nationals. And our culinary has several contests, and then our law enforcement and computer science have some contests in the spring too. And again, this doesn't include them advancing with days we don't know. Okay, I know there's that. And to talk about, so what we're proposing is based on those days, so it's 185 days, which is more than a school year, is purchasing a 14-passenger activity bus. And the reason for the 90-10 split is that even though the funding is there from our CTE allotment to do it 100%, if we did it 100%, only CTE could use it. If we split it and transportation kicks in some, then when it's not being used, then golf team could use it. Or if you've got something that's 14 or less students going to a contest or somewhere, a field trip or whatever, then it could be used by them. It's just a calendaring thing. So then I'll let Jason take over and get into some more details about that.
So in essence, trying to create a transportation system that allows for efficient transportation across the board is probably one of the hardest things that I do on a daily basis. But even harder are the days that we have, and I can tell you probably May of last year, April or May, when we had to have very real conversations when all of our vehicles are out. And the vehicle that we have left is just one shy of what we really need to send. So we as a district have to make hard decisions like, well, we're gonna have to take and leave this alternate here. We can't take you because we don't have the room. We don't have the room to not only fit you here, but also another driver to be able to take you where we're going. Because we utilize multiple aspects. The big yellow school bus obviously is one of them, but we also have a fleet of Suburbans. Well, with that comes with those challenges. The good thing about this type of vehicle is it adds that carrying capacity almost double of what we normally have. So instead of 8 in one vehicle, or 9 in some, I'm sorry, my health sciences just they pack every morning 3 times a week, like sardines, but so it's to give them a little bit more room. So it adds that flexibility into our system to allow transportation of our students to extracurricular and co-curricular. They do offer this type of vehicle that is yellow, that it's a traditional looking school bus. It's just a much smaller basis to transfer students to and from home. This particular vehicle would not be allowed to transport students to and from school and to and from home, just because it's built as a bus per se and not necessarily a school bus. The only difference is obviously is the color and then the stop signs to go with it. But all the safety manufacturer, all that is built into this type of vehicle. You would see something similar like this in the airport. They're just a little bit cheaper because they don't have the structural integrity as what this vehicle would come with. So just kind of some differences. The biggest thing with this particular vehicle is no CDL required. This is big in our industry right now just because of how difficult it is to go through that process. I think sometimes they're looking for a rocket scientist that doubles as a babysitter and many other things, but it's become a challenge on not only on the national level, but locally as well. But so no CDL would be required. Anything under 15 passengers, what this is, it's definitely more cost efficient. When we send a bus from here to Dallas, or from here to Dallas, Amarillo, back to Houston, kind of back and forth like what our ag department does, and they have 6 kids in it, it's really not effective and definitely not efficient on our side. Especially when we have other routes that when they do that, we typically have to downgrade into one of our subunits that carry less. So now we're having to do some shuffling here and there and kind of projecting based on attendance levels and so forth. And the rest is getting into smaller and maneuverability. When you get into some of these areas where our competitions are, it's definitely smaller. It's kind of in parking lots. It's not really something feasible for the big yellow school bus. And then on the other side for our SUVs, it's carrying a larger capacity. Instead of 8 or 9, now we're able to carry 14. So the times of being able to carry an alternate to be able to hopefully get from number 8 in the Lone Star Cup to hopefully in the top 3 very soon, which will be able to kind of give us that flexibility and also reduce the number of rentals that we have to go back and forth. And that's kind of a big number, not really a lot in dollar cents as far as direct, but the indirect cost of just the logistic from us having to go back and forth to San Antonio to pick up 3 rentals is tremendous on my department. And then allows more students to participate. So what we're proposing is this one particular unit. It's a stock unit that is on a discounted rate just because they're trying to get rid of it. It's a 2018 model with less than 2,000 miles, just kind of demo miles. But also kind of looking at it, I took our ag department because they're going to be the majority of the persons using it. They had a kind of vision of what they would look like if they would purchase one. There's kind of different seating variations and various different kind of amenities that you can get. We walked on to the site and they immediately changed their mind. Because those activity seats, it was on a little bit smaller chassis, and we sat in as adults and it was very uncomfortable. And then I'm not really tall and not very wide, but some of our students are a lot taller than I am, and just for them to have to fit in that and drive all the way across the state would be very uncomfortable for them. But this particular unit, it kind of opened their eyes a little bit on what we would say is really in need, but it come to find out it's a want. It was something we really didn't want in the first place. So funding source, this particular unit, total price $62,049. That includes not only the unit cost, but also for the camera system as well. And that funding is broken down respectively on the 90%. And usually with this vehicle, it's going to be gone so much that really other than a Friday night or an occasional just makeshift trip, but it's there for flexibility. And then from the funding aspect, the CTE allotment is there, but from the transportation piece, if you notice back in our financial piece, we had a $10,000 savings just from the course of so far. We can able kind of reallot that and be able to shift that over to definitely fill this need.
I could potentially give you more savings later too in transportation.
Yes, correct. In the grand scheme of things, I probably need at least a handful of these, just kind of shuffle our kids back and forth, but one is definitely a great start.
So you're saying it was not budgeted for, but the savings that you're projecting through the year are going to cover the cost? The 10%. What about CTE? Did we budget for this expenditure in CTE?
We have for this year. Yes, our allotment is, I have, yeah, because our allotment was a little bit more than it's been in the past, so I'll leave it there. Thanks to House Bill 3.
It's not currently in a vehicle line item,
Okay.
but I would do a transfer within the existing.
Yeah, on the transportation side, there would have to be an adjustment.
Okay. And then the quote was good until 10/17?
Yes,
Are
sir.
they still honoring it?
Yes.
And did you look at other dealerships for multiple bids, or is this the best price?
With this one, I mean, they're pretty much in the same ballpark as far as ranges. This one was a little bit cheaper just because it was a 2018 model.
Like
It was a stock model they were trying to get rid of. Most of them is 60,000. You'll be able to get into that that entry ballpark of what those run. And then we added a couple options just for what our need would feel, like there was a large gap in the back of that unit. I'm not sure if you can actually see it in the picture, but in the back up here, it kind of just ends as a place for luggage, ice chests, and that kind of stuff. We added a kind of a rack to contain that, because underneath all of these seats is completely open. Those turn into, like I tell our students on a daily basis, bowling alleys from things rolling back and forth, and that would then kind of become a safety issue at that point.
I know CDL is not required, but would you still have training for the drivers?
Absolutely. The state of Texas, yes, no CDL is required, but we still hold our drivers to the same path. They will be required to enter into our drug and alcohol pool, as well as take a mandatory 20-hour, they call it the 20-hour certification, but it's the school bus driver certification of Texas.
Which Jason's looking into just setting that up here so that all who might be using it can do it all at one time.
That'd be good.
Yeah, so they can all just get that taken care of.
Yeah, and we can take, it's normally, because that course is designed for school bus drivers, and we wake up early in the morning and work late at night, so they typically during the middle of the day when our students are going back and forth to school. So they would be able to do that and reduce from 5 days to about 2.5, and just kind of do a condensed, fast-paced model.
For the teachers.
For our teachers and our staff.
Yeah.
Because in each individual organizations, I mean, most of them are 1 or 2 or 3 different individuals that would need to get that. So it would be a phased-in approach to get those people certified.
And to service the vehicle, just general scheduled maintenance, and your staff?
It's just like our cars and trucks.
Okay.
And one note to add, and I added it onto your board notes, is this particular vehicle, expected life expectancy is probably about 5 to 6 years. 10, but considering we the only one, probably closer to 5 or 6, just because of how well ag travels. And I mentioned them a lot on it here, but
Well,
just
and now
with their
the
travel schedule, it's,
practicum too.
yeah, and practicum going back and forth. I mean, I see this. I mean, our 2015 Suburban has over 100,000 miles in it already. Adding that to this vehicle, we're probably close to that.
So I think it's a good idea to have this in the fleet. I mean, you convinced me from the standpoint of it being utilized well. So the only question that I have, and it's maybe something that you have considered or may consider in the future, is instead of purchasing, is there lease options? Because once you purchase, now all of a sudden you own this asset, and something happens even before maybe we use it a little bit more instead of 6 to 10 years, maybe we're hitting 5 years, because those ag guys are really using it. But, I mean, if you have a lease option where it's leased, at some point it's going to, you need to turn it over, because you want something that's a little bit newer, a little bit more reliable, less miles. I don't know if there's options like that or not. I call it a
There's
lease
definitely
option.
option. It's just, historically, that's not been our purchasing process, but definitely something to consider, especially with our needs. It would be a kind of an alternative method to kind of filling our need and kind of adjusting it a little bit, but definitely something worth talking about.
And what I'm hearing with the amount of miles they're driving, the lease, sometimes lease options have mileage restrictions,
So
and
maybe
you have to pay a fee if you go over that.
It's a little bit different in
It
the
sounds
school
like you're
environment.
driving.
Government capital is great with their financing options, and most of it's just finance and lie, where you're taking that cost of that unit and you're spreading it out over a certain amount. There's really no major penalty of it. It's not like I'm gonna go rent a Ferrari and lease it for 5 years and it's only gonna have
Certainly a good
10,000 miles.
point.
From a whole, financing, leasing is definitely an option that I think we need to venture down into.
I think rental may be, like we have to go and rent a vehicle sometimes now, is what you're saying. I think maybe that's gonna be a little more expensive, but I don't know what options are.
I mean, from a rental aspect, for a short-term need, vehicle going down for repair or maintenance, that kind of stuff, it would be a great kind of just a backup plan.
Right.
But historically in this area, it's difficult to get what we need, especially during rodeo season, because all of the SUVs get gobbled up and there's really, you cannot go anywhere to get one. So we're still not helping with our options, but.
And using 186 days, I mean, and that's just normal activities, that's not even the advancement, you know, from a rental
Absolutely.
standpoint, you're just gonna rent it by the month.
What about warranty with this vehicle? Does it come with any kind of warranty?
I believe it's 5-year,
100,000.
5-year,
Body chassis and then
But not bumper to bumper though?
no, it's a GM's powertrain warranty.
Yeah.
they're pretty close to the school bus warranty, and that's 3 years, and then 5 years on powertrain, and,
But not bumper to bumper since it's.
no, sir.
Okay.
This is something we've been talking about for a while. Jason and I have really been looking into it and the need that's there and.
And it seems like it would be a viable, good option
It
to,
would be a
and if
viable-
the timing is right now to do this.
Yes, ma'am.
And then, look at the usage and the realization, and it may be something that leads to
Yes, ma'am.
additional vehicles that we lease out, because we see this, the overall savings and what we can do with this different unit. So it seems like this is an optimal time to venture out to something like that.
And do we have the money for the camera? Is that
He said it was
something
the savings.
Yeah, it would be gone with the savings that we've had so far.
So it'd be $7,800 from the transportation side.
Yes.
And then 54, and so you would, I guess that 54.2 would be transferred from CTE, and transferred to the transportation budget as, in
Can't
case
say
of,
the budget itself, but
It would stay in CTE.
CTE would buy it.
okay,
So we have to reflect that we're spending the money on.
Yes.
on CTE.
Because remember,
Yes,
CTE funding is
that's right.
weighted funding. We didn't want.
It's weighted
Weighted.
funding.
Is there a reporting requirement on the use of the bus? Is there an annual, okay, we used it? so
Well, I
many
mean,
dollars
internally
a
there
mile.
will be because we're doing a 90-10, which is pretty common from what I've talked to other districts. And so, we would start out with obviously scheduling it out for CTE and then, but that would still come.
But
through.
there's no state requirement, making sure that we're using our banks and.
Yeah, I mean, we were reported on the transportation side, not wholly towards CTE.
Okay.
And through our electronic fuel management system, our electronic trip management system, we'll be able to identify, all right, we're going a little bit too far over here, let's shift it back, and we can easily identify that. That we just switched to, thanks to Angela, I know she's not here today, but we just did some adjustments to where the new company that we're looking at, it's just a customer report, and I click a button, we can have our answers. And to answer your question on the warranty, it is 5-year, 100,000 miles on body shell, paint, negation, and seat frames. And then on the chassis itself, it's just typical GM, it's 36,000 miles. Per year, 36,000.
I move to approve the purchase of a 2018 Microbird G5 MFSAB from Rush Bus Center, quote, number 36976R, and camera system from 247 Security Incorporated.
I second.
Any discussion?
So, Amy, do you mind just kind of going through that and explaining kind of how this funding is going to reflect from CTE and just make sure that we are clear on how that is going to be funded and shown as well?
So we have, the CTE funding that we're projecting at 2.2 million, that's coming straight from our current summary of finance from the TEA. So we have a summary of finance that says we estimate based on the most current data, the TEA does, based on the most current data, how much funding that the district will receive for all of our different allotments. Right now, the 2.2 is our estimate. We have to spend 55% of that on CTE.
Okay.
So when we purchase the vehicle, even though the vehicle will be maintained mechanically by transportation, we'll have to make that purchase out of the CTE funding so that it applies to that 55% requirement. And then I was going to answer Ms. Burkle's question, if I can go backwards in a second. Sure. There's not reporting requirements necessarily that we would have to provide annually. But if the TEA were to audit our spending, we we would have to provide documentation to demonstrate that CTE utilized the vehicle at least 90% of the time. Now, they can use it 100% of the time, if that's how it works out. But we wanted to have at least a 10% of wiggle room to be able to allow other programs to utilize the vehicle, if warranted.
And who's gonna be tracking that usage, that 90%?
The transportation department has a system, so when you take a vehicle from transportation, whether it's a Suburban or a bus, there's a system that tracks who took it and for what purpose and the date and all of that. So we'll have it in that system that we can pull by vehicle ID.
And on top of it, there's also an internal approval system that goes on with it.
Any further discussion? All in favor? Motion passes 6-0. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
It is now 8:22 and we're convening closed session pursuant to Texas Government Code sections 551.071, 551.072, 551.074, 551.076, 551.081, discussion of application within the council regarding and including rules of deliberation regarding real property discussion, personnel including 1920 probationary contracts, executive briefing on safety and security, update regarding status of the Berkeley Police Department investigation, lieutenant, and consideration of appropriate district actions, employment evaluation, reassignment duties, discipline, dismissal, or resignation of the superintendent.